I'm delighted to welcome to the show right now Mesa Gifford. He's a former British volunteer with the Ukrainian army. He also fought against ISIS in Syria. Mesa, thank you so much for joining us.
Good afternoon.
I appreciate this. Now, I got a call a little bit earlier and I put this question. Who do you trust most on Ukraine? Is it Donald Trump, Zelensky or Vladimir Putin? And one of our callers made the very fair point. Well, are you going to, get your camouflage kit on and go and fight? Is Sam going to go and fight? Will you send your children to go and fight? It's all very well being an armchair general, but you actually have done that yourself. Who do you trust most on Ukraine?
Zelensky. And the truth is, Zelensky is the democratically elected leader of Ukraine, a sovereign European nation that's been brutally invaded by a dictatorship. Putin has rolled back any notion of democracy in his own country. He's butchered people in Ukraine. He's persecuted gay people in Russia. He's destroyed any opposition to his rule. Donald Trump has this sort of mercantile view of international relations. He is very much America first, Britain last, Europe last, indeed everyone who's non-American last, which in some respects
entitled to
okay.
do. He's entitled
to do. I was just about to say. Yet at the same time, I find it quite frustrating to see Brits putting all their faith in Donald Trump when we as a country will actually suffer for many of his decisions, not just on the economy, but also on his views on international relations. If we want to be a bold, ambitious, great country again ourselves, we need to be supporting countries like Ukraine. This is about Britain and not American foreign policy.
Yeah, and this is the interesting thing. And again, we in Europe need to care a bit more about the security of Europe than countries on the other side of the Atlantic. Although, of course, it is also in America's best interest, actually, long term, for us to have that bulwark against an autocratic and dangerous dictator like Vladimir Putin. Why do you think Donald Trump seems to think that Putin's an okay guy? He said he's a man, that he could trust, and he's had we know he's had a number of meetings where, no officials present, no one taking a record. Is he, as some suggest, has Putin got compromised him? Is he basically an agent for Vladimir Putin, as conspiracy theorists would say, or does he just admire him as a strong man and wish he had the same sort of power?
Oh, no, I think at the end of the day, we are entering a new phase of our civilization, and also as mankind, I should really say, i.e. the sort of peace dividend that we have enjoyed for so many years after the fall of the Soviet Union is now well and truly over. America is no longer, or is conceding now, that it's no longer the sole dominant superpower of the world. And the narrative that's been going on for a long time, pushed by Russia and China, that we live in a multipolar world, which is basically a balkanized world where there are power centers and regional power centers that exist. I think Donald Trump is starting to admit that. But what frustrates me is it's America admitting to its decline, essentially. They're no longer willing to fight for Europe. Yeah. They want to pivot their attention to Asia to counter the rise of China. And in doing so, they're going to throw to the wolves their long-term allies. Yeah. It is a wake-up call for us as Britain, and also as Europeans too. And we need to be investing in our defense. We cannot rely on the United States to defend us. There are growing powers in Russia and China, and we need to do more to counter those.
And I appreciate that wake-up call. And by the way, Donald Trump delivered that wake-up call back in 2016, 2017, and they chose to ignore him, didn't they? I mean, you could argue really that a lot of people, a lot of sort of hand-wringing sort of centrists were all like, oh, peace is the norm, war is separation. It's not. The last 30 years after the Cold War, and the sort of peace dividend, not everywhere, but largely, certainly where the Westerners were concerned, that has been the aberration. And these power blocks and competing national and economic and geographic interests and battles for vital resources, whether it's minerals or oil or water, we're told is going to be the one in the future. That is more the norm. That is the norm. Absolutely. Not what we've been going through in recent decades.
No, absolutely. And to be honest with you, I did not vote to leave the EU. I wanted for Britain to leave the EU. I was actually fighting against the Islamic State at the time and missed the referendum. But would have voted. My ambition for Britain, as Winston Churchill once said, if it was a choice between Europe and the open sea, always choose the open sea. And if Britain is going to make a success of Brexit, if it's going to stride confidently into the future as a world power, as a country that is still globally significant, I don't like to see people do this country down. I see it a lot online. We need to be engaging in countries like Ukraine. Ukraine is an ally of the UK. It is a country with vast potential, and our growing alliance with them is absolutely in our interest, both politically, economically, militarily, and everything else. So pushing back against Vladimir Putin is vital to our national interest.
Yeah. That's the thing, and people, I completely agree with you on that. That people think, well, we're just helping little old Ukraine out. Ukraine, as you say, a very significant country, and we know from the wheat supplies, the sunflower oil, the fertilizer, everything else. It's absolutely a really significant country. It's one of the reasons why it's been fought over so much, and why Vladimir Putin wants it so badly. But in terms of look, I'm not a conspiracy theorist about people's views. I think when someone says to me, "Oh, you only say that because someone's paying you to say that," no, I just give my views. And I think most people do. But nevertheless, a lot of the stuff that people will say when they're critical of Zelensky, "Oh, we did that Vogue cover. Oh, we called her earlier saying, oh, he's travelling around the world, the globe, instead of sitting in his bunker," or corruption and things, seems to me are Kremlin talking points. This is stuff that the Kremlin is putting out online. Those little bots everywhere, these talking points, their little busy bees are online, and they're pushing these points, and they are being parroted again and again by people in this country, in America, and even by the man who sits in the Oval Office at the White House. Why? I mean, how and why does that happen? That this narrative has become so strong and has basically taken over the American president?
Well, it shows you how vulnerable we are in the West. So Russia has always played to its strengths. It is a country that was severely diminished after the fall of the Soviet Union. They don't have the resources to invest to compete with the United States and other major world powers. So they've invested in certain areas. The rise of Wagner Group under Prigozhin, the rise of these troll farms and the use of disinformation. He basically saw an opportunity in Western democracy, which has a free press and everything else, to exploit and to divide the West. One of my frustrations with the extreme left in the West over the last few years is the rise of this. We are so polarized because of the so-called cultural war that we've got into that has distracted us from the rise of China and Russia and some genuine autocracies and brutal regimes. And these regimes have actually utilized that against us. They have divided us. They've funded certain people online. There's been a lot of cases in the United States in particular where people have been receiving money, sometimes unaware that they're receiving Russian money for the things that they say. And so this is a deliberate ploy by China and Russia to exploit our weaknesses in the West. So we need to wake up to that fact. And what frustrates me is it's up to our political leadership to, first of all, wake us up to that growing threat, but also reiterate and reaffirm and to tell us why it's in our national interest to be supporting Ukraine and to be standing up for ourselves on the global stage. We've got weak leadership in Britain and in the West generally. We haven't articulated the course to people on the streets, and we need to be doing more, because at the end of the day, we are sleepwalking into a crisis, and that crisis is a growing sort of reality that there is a axis of evil on this planet that does want to see the decline of our civilization in the West, of democracy, of freedom of speech, that sort of stuff, to their own benefits. And they're doing everything they can to exploit our weaknesses. So we need to double down and fight back.
Here to all of that, Mesa Gifford, thank you very much indeed. Former British volunteer with the Ukrainian army, and like us sitting in this studio, Sam Armstrong, he put his money where his mouth is, and he goes, I mean, I'm in awe of people like him who go and, risk their own lives like that for a battle, Again, and I think the threat from Putin, threat from China, and also, that threat from Islamofascism, ISIS, Hamas, Hezbollah, all of that, the West it's just been sleepwalking, hasn't it?
Yeah, but what I think Mesa speaks to is actually the fact that these may be conflicts in a land far away of which we know little.
Not that far.
But actually, in actual fact, the freedoms that Mesa was talking about defending are our own. He recognises the fact that, in order to protect ourselves in Europe, we must draw a line which says you can't go rampaging round European countries taking over them, because we've seen how that record ends before. And in order to stand up to Islamofascism, you have to kill it wherever it exists. And I say kill it, believe it.
I mean quite literally. No, I mean quite literally kill kill it.
Exactly so, because these people will stop at nothing until they have destroyed everything that we hold dear. You can't just, in this world that we live in now, in which people can get around remarkably quickly, you can't just ignore things, because if you let it fester, it grows. It's
and
like
singing
gangrene.
Kumbaya,
deal with it.
Singing Kumbaya and being all nicey about everything is all, and let's just have some talks and some negotiations. It's actually just not how the world actually works in the real world.